And we wanted to invite you tonight to talk about a lot of different things. One is registration for the fall 2021 school year. We want to talk about what your choices are as parents in the 2021 school year to start out with, and then what your options would be moving forward. And then we really want to open it up to any questions that you might have in regards to Riverside specific or even Fond du Lac School District. And then I'll take any comments, feedback, questions, and if I don't know the answer, I'll find it for us. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We're up to like 36 and growing. Love it. I wanted to start out with, I was thinking one of the things we wanted to share tonight was that registration piece. So I'm going to share my screen with all of you so that you can see a little bit of a slideshow so you have a visual and the audio of some of the information. Ooh, Mrs. Meyer, you got to give me access now that we changed over. Try it again. Oh, it just makes me smile seeing all these great faces. Love it. Or Mrs. Meyer, you can share your screen and that would work too.
Hi.
While Mrs. Meyer's kind of, oh, there we go. Thank you, Mrs. Meyer.
Ms. Meyer.
Yay. Okay, on your screen, you should be seeing my slideshow for today. And the first one is just the poster that you saw on social media that invited you to tonight's meeting. And then the next one lets you know about registration. So registration for this year can be done entirely online on your own, or it can be done with some support either at the administration building or with Riverside staff. And registration begins tomorrow, Tuesday, August 4th, and goes through Friday, August 7th. Registration is going to have support at the administration building, so the 9th Street entrance, and you may go there from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And you can go there on Wednesday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Or you can come and join Riverside staff, and we would be happy to help you register on Wednesday night as well from 3 p.m. till 6:30. If you're going to join us on Wednesday night, we just ask that you park in the big parking lot in the back of the building. Then you enter through the gym doors, door 13, where a Riverside staff member will greet you, and we will help you stay social distanced, as well as we ask that you please wear a mask to join us, and try to bring as few family members as possible because we are trying to sustain safe numbers, social distancing, and we're trying to really focus on making sure that you're registered properly and that you have all of your questions answered on that evening. So that's Wednesday, 3 to 6:30 at Riverside, or it's daily at the administration building, 9 a.m. to 3, or Wednesday night as well at the administration building from 3 to 6 to get help to register. If you have any questions, I have Mrs. Meyer helping me out. If you want to raise your hand, or any of the Riverside staff that are on, and if they see you raising your hand or put anything in the chat, then they'll let me know so that we can get those questions answered, because I can't see all of that as well. Mrs. Meyer, we can't hear you.
Riverside staff, will you watch for the hand raising? Because I'm watching the chat room and the people entering. And then also parents, I see one person like a Galaxy 5 that must keep it getting bumped out. I'm also Facebook Living this. So if it's easier for you to access this through Facebook Live, you can do that.
We really are trying to find every method for you guys to get the information and make sure you are understanding and asking any questions. So. Okay, registration that begins tomorrow. Like I said, you have those options of daily 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. or Wednesday 3 to 6:30 at the Riverside Gym or 3 to 6 at the administration building. As you go and register, you have options. Parents, you have 2 learning choices for a platform for your child to learn on this school year. And this is where we will begin, but we can always change as the year goes, either by your choice or by the change by the Fond du Lac County and their recommendation of what's the safest means to learn for our children. The Fond du Lac School District proposed to the Fond du Lac School Board last week 4 different models of learning. And I wanted to just share those so you understand the different levels. The first, which is the blue one on the far left, or my left, is called traditional. That's what your child lived through all of their educational career. That's what we were in last year. When we can operate as normal and run our schedule as normal and our practices as normal. The next model is called the traditional modified. And that was the one that was selected by the school board for our elementary buildings to follow and start our school year. The traditional modified model is a 5-day-a-week model where your child attends daily. And we do things within the school to keep it safer for your child and for our staff. Things such as social distancing, wearing masks, washing hands more frequently, sanitizing, changing our cleaning methods, as well as changing our lunch and recess practices to create the safest environment. And I'll go into more detail on that in just a second. The next model is called the blended model. The blended model was approved by the school board to be used at the middle school and high school level. The blended model was not approved for the elementary level at this time. The blended model is a group A and a group B, what they call cohort groups. Group A attends school on Monday and Tuesday in person, and then learns remotely Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Group B learns remotely Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and learns in person on Thursday and Friday. That is the model or one option for the high school and the middle schools this coming school year. And the last model is the remote model. That is an option for all parents that your child can learn virtually or remotely, where a teacher will then connect with them remotely through the computer and provide educational instruction. This model does not have an in-person part to it at all. When you go to register, you are going to be choosing from the traditional model that's been modified or the remote model. So you'll have 2 options, traditional modified or remote. This is just an image on the screen next that you'll be seeing from the school district giving you directions. It's found right on the Fond du Lac School District website, and it gives you all the links to Skyward and directions how to register online if you choose to do it entirely by yourself, unless you come in and get the help from us or the administration building. The next one is the in-person learning, that traditional modified that I talked to you about. I want to give you some more feedback about traditional modified. If you choose the traditional modified platform for your child to learn on, and let me say before I keep talking about it, is that there's no right answer here. Whatever your heart and whatever best for your family, that's the right answer. And that answer can change based on the circumstances in our community. And I'll talk about the different options of changing in a little bit. So the in-person traditional modified model is your child attending school 5 days a week. We are looking at what our start time and our stop time will look like, and there'll be more information to come about that. It will be similar to what we have run before. In that traditional modified model, your child, as well as all staff, would be wearing face coverings, a mask. We ask that you supply a mask that your child is comfortable with, but we will be providing breaks throughout the day where your child may take off the mask. For example, safely social distancing at recess would allow a child to take off a mask. Mask breaks in appropriate, safe ways, we would allow that as well. So when we can have the child 6 feet apart from other children and staff, those would be opportunities where the child could take off their mask, get a little breather, do a little movement break, and then put the mask back on. Anytime they are under 6 feet or close to other staff or students, they would be required to keep their mask on for the safety of all. Classrooms, we are going to schedule movement breaks We are also going to keep class sizes as low as possible and keep the students within their own bubble of learners. So a class, like I saw Mrs. B on here earlier, Mrs. B's class wouldn't be going and having buddy time with third graders during the traditional modified model because we wouldn't want to expose those students to another group of children. We'd want to keep them within their learning family in their classroom as much as possible. We would also do things like changing their classroom around by taking out some furniture and putting in different types of furniture that would allow your child to spread out and to reduce sharing of materials. Sometimes it would be using electronics. Sometimes it would be using paper so that another child doesn't have the same objects. Sometimes when we do have to share manipulatives, we'd be cleaning those and sanitizing those in between each use of each child. Books and things would be quarantined for like 3 days or whatever the safety protocols are at that time. And that way we'd then put them back into the system where students could use them. So we would use different cleaning protocols to make sure that the classrooms are safe and ready to go. We would also have different hallway activities. For example, you using the restroom or going to the recess time. Students would stay on the right side of the hallway and they would social distance while walking down the hallway while wearing their masks. We would also reduce the number of hallway movements. We would ask like our encore teachers to push into the classroom and teach within the homeroom teacher's classroom instead of the students walking to music or walking to art or media. We are hoping to have some great opportunities and wonderful weather so that gym could be outside, so students could get the fresh air, they could have mask breaks when planned, and have some more movement. We would also have scheduled bathroom breaks as well as unscheduled ones when they're necessary, but the scheduled ones would be where teachers escort their students to the restroom. They have marks outside of the restroom so they can socially distance while waiting their turn. We would have a set number of students that can be allowed in at one time to support social distancing, and then there would be a rotation and back to their classroom. Another way that we're working on trying to limit movements and make sure that we're scheduling times where students are not mixing with other grade levels or other bubbles of learners to keep that increased safety for all students and all staff. I mentioned that Encore would be pushing into a lot of our classrooms to teach. That is so that multiple groups of students are not being exposed to the same classroom over a single day. We would also lessen the amount of shared materials, and we would do our very best to provide specific materials to each student. If an Encore teacher wasn't available, we would be providing virtual lessons within the classroom. So for example, Mr. Schutte and Mrs. Thede are shared amongst 2 buildings. If they weren't able to be in our building at that time, we would virtually show the lesson and then provide that support to teach that lesson within our classroom so that we are keeping it safe for all. Any questions on that page? If you want to raise your hand, we can
They do have some questions.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to do them, and then if you still have questions beyond this, guys, make sure you raise your hand. I just love the Riverside parents. This is awesome. All right, so one of the questions is that kind of pertains to this in model is if I choose in-person learning, do I have an option to send my daughter just 4 days per week each week?
The board-approved model for the traditional modified is to request that the child attends 5 days a week, but I think your question has great merit, and so let me write it down and ask. But at this time, the model is fully remote or fully in person for elementary.
Good. Mrs. Rathman, will you write down questions for us? And
Thank you, Stefan.
So I have a question. So if you don't choose for your kid to go 5 days a week and you want them to do like virtual, like what we did last year, half of the year going to school or half of the year doing it on the computer, or do it like the high school is, couple days a week in school and then a couple days out of school. So we still have to send them 5 days a week?
In the current model that was approved, we are preparing our staff to be in 2 different groups of educators. One group of educators is fully remote so that we can provide the highest education to the fully remote learners. And the other group of educators is to provide the highest level of education to students that are fully in person. So we do not have a blended model at the elementary level, and we need those models to be in that format right now because of staffing, to make sure that every student is getting the greatest possibility for social, emotional, and academic support.
Okay, but the thing is, like the 5th graders, that's one of them things where that's part of, like, yes, they're getting social, like getting the whole school stuff and stuff like that. But how is that making them to look forward for like middle school or high school if they're going to be moving on from elementary school to keep on exceeding and doing self-efficient stuff if they can't even work on a computer from home 1 or 2 days a week and still go to school? That's my biggest question. And is there an adult that's going to follow these kids around and disinfect and make sure that every single one of these kids are social distancing and making sure they're wearing a mask? Because I'm going to tell you right now that some parents don't even, or adults don't do this. So how do you expect like 500 kids or more to do this?
Yeah, thank you for the great question. We do anticipate that there are going to be learning curves to this, and the school district is planning and preparing for that. We are a big PBIS school, so we believe in a lot of positive role modeling, positive support, and positive training. And so all students will be taught how to take the mask on and off. They will be taught where to stand and practicing the cues of how to stand and walk appropriately and safely. They will be taught how we clean things. So sometimes they're participants and sometimes they won't be. Staff are going to be doubled up in classrooms for all of our breakfast, our lunch times, because lunch is going to be brought to your child's classroom. And there will be some, in many cases, I should say, in the classroom when the child's food is brought to the classroom, that second staff member will help sanitize before the children sit down to eat and will help sanitize after the children get up. There will be extra hand washing, and that will be explained to the kids how to hand wash, what it looks like to be a safe hand washer. So all of those practices will be taught in school and supported by all staff.
Okay, I understand that, but I'm just saying you pretty much are putting the elementary kids out there, unlike the older kids. So pretty much they get to be singled out of the older kids. I think all the rules for older kids and younger kids should be the same. It shouldn't be, oh, this, because they're in high school or middle school, they get to have more advantages for stuff. I'm gonna tell you right now, because you at work don't get more advantages than your coworker next to you. And you don't think that some of us parents haven't been doing this whole thing or doing stuff? Because me here at work still, I've been working through this whole thing and doing stuff like this and teaching my kids. And you really think these kids are going to follow the directions of this? This is hilarious. Sorry.
Well, can I just jump in? Part of that isn't, like, that's the school board's decision. What we want to do is just move it forward as best we can in that. But I love that you get the keep your child at home option too on that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right now, I don't understand why we're preparing for school, because right now it's getting even worse, more in Fond du Lac or other towns that now they're requiring masks. So I don't understand why we're pushing for school. We should just do like we did at the end of the year and keep it going. Because now they're just preventing it for these kids to get it and bring it home.
Yeah, I really respect everything that you're saying. And the gift of this opportunity is the school board has told us we want to give parents options. And these are the two options provided to us at this time. And so we need to make them the very best option they can be. And so hearing what you're saying and having a lot of empathy for what you're saying, you may want to look at the remote option then for the comfort of yourself, your family, and your child. That's why those two models are out there. The administrators and the school buildings have to abide by the vote of the Fond du Lac School District board members. You are welcome. I'm going to take your feedback and share that with them, and I encourage you to do the same. Reach out to the school board member and share those thoughts, because we want to make our families happy. That's why we're here tonight. So I really appreciate that question. What's our next question?
Like I said, right now in this town, it is just in the last week got worse that they're requiring you to wear a mask when you're going out to go shopping or certain
That's
things
all
more than they were.
Right. We're going to stop with that question at this point, because those are things that are outside of the control of Riverside. And I want to come back to that, and I'd be happy to speak with you at a later time.
Yeah, I took down your name too, Ashley. So Mrs. Hughes, if you want to call, she'll recognize that. So somebody said about initially the school board had stated that 3rd grade and above, and this person said, however, I assume that the new Governor Evers mandate supersedes that, but they wanted to know, what about 4K? Does 4K wear masks?
That's a great question. 4K has not been given the recommendations by the state and the CDC, so they're waiting for some feedback yet. So that has not been determined. We will follow the recommendation that we are given by the county and CDC, and we have not been given that yet. So that is not determined.
And then somebody said, what if the mask mandate is dropped? We'll re-inform parents as to what the new protocol would be?
We will definitely inform parents as any protocols change. Erin Brendelson, our Director of Health and People Services, works directly with the county particularly, and then all other health departments, to get the most up-to-date information almost on a daily basis. And as that comes back to us, we would communicate that to all of you.
So if the mandate is dropped, is there an option to do online only until the mandate is dropped? And then if it is dropped, are they allowed to go without a mask? Do you have like superseding rules that say no masks in school anyways, or?
Yeah, you opened a great opportunity for me to share some of those options. You will have the option, so if you choose traditional modified learning and your child is in school 5 days a week, and for any reason of your choosing, if you decide that your child should not be attending the 5-day-a-week traditional modified model, you may choose to go remotely. Once you choose to go remotely, you will be asked to remain remote until a set amount of time. The last recommendation I heard is at trimester. So every trimester, you'd be able to reevaluate as a parent and decide if you'd like your child to continue with remote or go into the traditional modified or whatever platform we're using at that time. Does that answer the question?
So another question that was here was that about social distancing during recess. I think you kind of addressed that when you said we're just really going to have to work on those protocols with kids. Mm-hmm. Let's see. And there is a lot of questions about making sure that mask is, and yeah, for sure that will be our purpose at the beginning, is just really helping those kids through that.
And I would encourage parents to help us be a team together. Practice at home. Try to practice, especially because our goal is to keep their hands away from their face. So encourage them to wear it around the house or to a task or a place you might go, and practice washing their hands, practice leaving it on. So do some great positive feedback to your child at home as well. And we're going to work extremely hard at it and diligently at it at school.
Somebody asked how many children will be in the 4K classroom, and I know those numbers. Our registration really helps us to prepare for that. Then we'll know that, correct?
Correct. And I know they were looking at numbers to not exceed 15, and then they were even talking lower numbers than that. But it will depend on what we receive back from all of you as you register. So your registration is extremely important.
Good. Can you talk through speech therapy, how that will work for kids?
Speech therapy currently is looking at a model to do it through teletherapy. And so they would be working with the child through a virtual piece that would allow your child to get all of their speech minutes. More than likely, they would probably be one-on-one or in extremely small groups. They will not be pulling groups into their office unless we can provide all the safety measures of things like plexiglass, masks, social distancing if there is more than one person in there and 6 feet.
All right, so what about kids that have asthma, somebody asks, and it's hard for that child to wear a mask?
That is something that the school district is creating protocols on. There will be exceptions to wearing the mask for students that have medical needs to not be wearing one. And that will work out with the family, with our nurse, and then with Erin Brendelson, our Director of Health.
And just so you know, the family that asked that, I wrote down your name so we can make sure that we reach out to you when we get that information. Okay, so this one has showed up a couple times, and you're probably going to address it, but just because it keeps popping up and I don't want to miss it. Will remote learning students be able to work with a Riverside teacher?
Also a wonderful question. It really depends on staffing. We are going to strive to have Riverside teachers teach our remote learners. We know that they will be teaching our in-school learners. If they are a remote learner and the numbers are very skewed from one school to another, then a remote teacher from our building or another building may be teaching some of our remote learners. It is not a guarantee that all remote learners will have a Riverside teacher if they're a Riverside student, but it is in the best interest of the students to stay within their learning family of Riverside. So we will strive to do that if at all possible.
All right, and then there's a concern here about with spending so much time working on protocols now, they're worried about how that might affect the education, the like regular curriculum.
Yeah, the rigor of our curriculum is going to be sustained. The amount of curriculum that we can get through the duration of the traditional modified model or another learning model like remote is going to vary slightly because, just as you said, the safety protocols have to come first. The safety of your child and our staff is the utmost priority for us. So yes, we cannot get through the amount of content that we could have gotten through in our normal everyday traditional model that we are all used to prior to last spring. But the delivery of it will be quality, it will be rigorous, it will be an advantage to our students. It will look different remotely. Remote learners don't have the gift of having other peers to listen to as easily. They don't have the gift of having the visuals in front of them in a three-dimensional way. They don't have the gift of having a teacher being able to come up near them and explain things. So there are some advantages and disadvantages to both learning models. The remote one allows a family to get on when it works for their family. That doesn't happen in the in-person model. You'll have the set beginning and ending of your day. The remote model also allows you to work with your remote teacher and schedule a time for your child to Zoom or Google Meet with them to be working interactively with your teacher. So there's some flexibility. So there's gifts to both models.
So this person wants to know what the online curriculum will look for, and specifically this is for a 5K. Because it sounds like they're leaning towards doing the online model, but they're not comfortable with the mask wearing, but they want to know what that online model is going to look like.
Okay, I skipped ahead a few slides on my shared screen for you. The remote learning, and this is grades 1 through 5. If you think of the kindergarten model and probably cut about a third of that off minute-wise, that's about the minutes we're anticipating for kindergarten, but they're working out their own guidelines for kindergarten because we know that they learn differently and that it's their first experience at the Riverside kindergarten setting. So the sample here shows a remote learning schedule of 45 minutes for the morning meeting, circle time, which could be anything from like some language work, shared reading time, circles to support their social and emotional needs, then 15 to 25 minutes of interactive read aloud, 60 minutes of reading, writing workshop rotations, 60 minutes of a math block, which would be math practices and Bridges mini lessons, as well as number corner, 60 minutes of encore, and we're working out when that would be, as well as 45 minutes of some social studies and science that might be integrated with writing and reading and math as well.
And now, it's going to look different than it did during the spring, isn't it? Because there's going to be more expectation as we go into this next round.
Mrs. Meyer, that's fantastic. You're right. It is going to be different expectations. There is going to be an attendance expectation that the learner that's remote is checking in for a certain amount of times or minutes. So we're going to be looking for the frequency of your child being online, actively engaged, and joining the one-on-one lessons when the teacher is present. We're also going to be looking at the data of the work that they do because there are going to be grades in place for this upcoming school year. So attendance and a frequency of either being at school in person or getting online and being remotely learning is going to matter and count, as well as we are going to look at the progress a child makes through the learning models this year as well. So you will be looking at standards for your child. We will be looking at ways to evaluate your child's progress and growth and monitor that, and then teach accordingly to it.
Awesome. Jim and Julie, why don't you jump in with your question?
Okay, well, first of all, I want to set the record straight. It's not always trying to get a hold of the school board. I called Dr. Susan Jones last week, and I'm still waiting for her to call me back. So, you know, it's easy to say contact the school board, but when the members don't contact you back and you have to leave a message, there's really no way to contact anybody on the school board. That's why we go to the district. I talked to Miss Simon last week, and I called my son's pediatrician and talked to her this morning. And I think it's kind of ironic that we're talking about these kids with asthma or other medical conditions wearing masks, social distancing. How can we talk about social distancing when we don't know how many kids are going to be in a class? Are we going to have 28 kids like last year? Are we going to have 15 this year? And then where are we going to get the extra teachers from? I mean, you know, what I don't understand is, why are the elementary school kids being used as an experiment? Because last week the American Medical Journal came out with a study that said kids under 5 have 10 to 100 times more coronavirus than adults. So my question is, why is this option of a hybrid not given to elementary school kids? That was not my understanding reading the initial proposals. And why are we doing something different for kids in elementary school than we are for all the other schools?
Those are all really,
it's not fair.
to address your part about the board. If you left a message and they have not returned your call, I would encourage you to send them an email, because I know they have been checking their emails. They stated in the board meeting when they did the vote that they had been looking at their emails. They were speaking on behalf of some of the people that had reached out to them. So I would encourage you to go with the email route, so that there is that copy of your words and your concerns, and that they're clearly voiced. In terms of the blended model, the board felt that being in person was more advantageous to the learning and social emotional needs of students. And they felt, along with the partnership with the school district, that we could come up with a staffing combination that would allow us to keep the numbers low enough to be safe. We at any time will never put your child at risk. We will always take the safety precautions that we are provided to give your child the safest and best education and social emotional support at all times.
And just in protection of Mrs. Hughes, like, we aren't making the decision. We're just executing, you know, and putting forth what we have been asked to do.
Correct. So
Okay.
As parents, how are we supposed to pick what option we want when we don't know how big the class is going to be?
You can feel free after you guys register 7th through the 10th, or 3rd through the 7th, I'm sorry. Then we are starting meetings already the week of the 10th. I am going to strive to keep every class at 15 or less. That is my heartfelt goal. And if you want to call and ask me where the numbers are at, give me to like the 15th-ish and call and ask me, and I would be happy to respond to you and give you the general reality at that moment. But remember, this is a very fluid situation, and parents are changing their mind based on their heart and their mind of what's best for their child.
So do you see, I get what Jim's saying though. This week they have to pick a decision. Mrs. Hughes, are they able to change their mind once that decision has been made?
Yeah, they are able to change their mind. If you go from in-person to remote, you do need to remain in remote till trimester. If you choose remote, you stay there until trimester. Now, the trimester is like November.
Okay.
I'd have to if somebody could pop up the date. I'm sure I see Mrs. Vang shaking her head. Maybe she can hop on a school district calendar for me, but I believe it's November. So if you, once you choose the remote option, you've chosen and committed to staying remote so that we can commit to giving the best education to our remote learners until November, that date of the trimester. And then you can reevaluate and go back to in-person, traditional modified, or whatever platform, or the remote option.
So if tomorrow we choose remote and we find out the class size is going to be smaller, then after we choose remote, we can't change our mind between now and the starting of the year?
We will try to accommodate that, but as soon as we get those numbers in, we are going to adjust staffing to try to strive to get to that lowest number possible.
Oh,
So I got a question about this whole thing that you're saying right now. Isn't normally in your classrooms 15 kids, well, in between 15 to 17 kids either way for each school year anyways?
The answer to that for Riverside only, this is not specific to other schools. We are what's called an AGR school for kindergarten through 3rd grade. And that means that the state supports our practice of having 18 or less students based on some of our demographic and academic data that's been shared with the state. So 3rd grade and under, 18 or less, unless we provide other different support systems. 4th grade and 5th grade can be a maximum of even 30, 32 students. It is not where we see our numbers.
No,
it's not our
because
normal.
in my son's class, there was 18 kids, and yes, there was a couple less, but then when my son needed help last year for certain things, I had to make it very clear and go into the school for him to get help, because they try to tell me that because you guys have too many kids and other kids need more help than my child did, that pretty much he got left out. So you guys are still going to go with how many kids already when it should be only like 4 to 6 kids per area or even per classroom.
Actually, those are not the guidelines. I'll refer you, and when I give you that personal call so we can talk about the specifics that you're discussing, because this conversation is really just to talk about the platforms, not to talk about specific circumstances about our individual families. Those I can deal and support every one of you with as much time as needed on an individual level. But the CDC and the county are what gives us the guidelines of how many students. And so we will follow whatever model that they're at. So if they tell us 10, we follow 10. If they tell us 15, we follow 15. But we do have the gift of being an AGR school. So our numbers 3rd and under are already lower. And then now we're looking at how to lessen them in the 4th and the 5th grade. But we first need to find out what you're feeling, your thoughts are. Are you going to have your child learn remotely or will learn traditional? Based on that data, we'll spread our staff out appropriately to support your students.
So somebody asked, are face shields an option instead of a mask?
Face shields are allowed, but there still has to be a mask underneath. The barrier that is proven to be the safest is the mask.
Okay. Okay, returns in person learning. Is there a way for a child to ask?
And always know
Can they ask for mask breaks? Can a child ask for a mask breaks? I know you were working on different areas where we could maybe have that.
Yeah, the staff is still working together to collaborate to figure out what are the best ways to provide mask breaks. But yes, we would provide mask breaks for children, especially as they're learning to a new practice. It's a new procedure. It's a new piece for all of us. And so we want to provide that learning tool and then celebrate when they have some longevity with wearing it. We're going to celebrate it. And then we're going to keep striving for a few more minutes. We want your child to be comfortable. We want them to be safe.
And I'm getting to, I see there are some that raised hands. We promised to get to those. Can you talk about, what about gym, art, music?
Yeah, let me see where we're at kind of on my slideshow here. That'll help me a little. So right now we're working through, there is a task force for just about every concern or big area. And one of the task force is Encore. Encore is looking at a rotational schedule to lessen the exposure to staff to students so that they don't see, in our case, we have about 329 students usually at Riverside. And we do not want our Encore teachers exposed to 329 students over 6 days. So we are looking at different schedules to lessen the exposure, which would probably, I anticipate, that your child will have the gift of one Encore for a set amount of time and then rotate to the next Encore. There also might be some other opportunities for enrichment through virtual opportunities provided for a lot of students or all students at different levels. So we are looking to lessen the exposure of staff members on court to students and create that safe environment. Media, we know, is going to be pushed into classrooms and come into your homeroom teacher's room so that the students aren't traveling through the hallway, because that would be an exposure, and aren't going into a classroom where another group of kids just was at, to lessen their exposure as well. We know that art is going to push into the classroom. We know that music is. Gym is the one that's going to be different, or if they can go outside, we really would like them to get outside and have that fresh air. Does that answer that question okay?
Yeah, I think that does. Thanks, guys. Okay, so Jessica, I'm going to butcher this last name, Pouch. And don't judge
Yes.
because, yeah. Sorry, how do you say that? I'm the reading specialist, and I'm like, oh, look at all those consonants all together.
It's pouch.
Pouch.
Yeah, it's weird.
So you have a question that's specific to.
I do.
Okay.
So the kids that are going remotely and we switch it trimester, then even if they're not remotely learning with if they're learning with a non-Riverside teacher, are they still going to be able to go back to Riverside if they go back to traditional?
Yes, I love your question, and I want to give you a big hug through the screen. So
yeah, and
you are always Riverside.
Somebody asked a similar question above Jessica's, and they said, like, what's that transition going to look like going from remote
Right.
back into the class?
Like the kids, Colby's been there for 5 years, and he's Riverside through and through, and he's worried about not seeing people or being moved to a different school. So I just wanted to make sure if we want to come back to traditional, we can.
We 100%. Once you are part of the Riverside family, you are always part of the Riverside family. We will transition and we will come up with the best support system to transition a student back to Riverside. If you decide at trimester you're going to join us, we will have them already kind of preset, like, okay, if this person comes back, we're going to try to put them in this homeroom or that homeroom. So they will definitely be joining a grade level team. We will be in contact with them. The principals actually talked about it just today, because we also have that concern. And so we were looking at, could grade levels like share a little shout out each week, or should we share more Riverside videos? We're going to find a way to keep you connected with what's going on at Riverside so that you still feel part of the entire learning community. And when you come back to us, we're going to make it seamless as possible.
Okay, because I know the virtual students are going to miss their friends too and stuff, and I know you can't control how that's all going to work, but we'd like to at least be able to come back. So
yeah,
Okay.
Somebody said, I'm glad we have the option at trimester. Thank you for that. Thanks for being so positive on that too. We feel bad having to even, present this. Okay, so somebody wants to know, if they do an online instruction, can we also get work packets and worksheets?
That would be specific to the remote teacher, but the remote teacher's model is to instruct, provide. That's why you are going to buy some school supplies, even if you're remote, because your child is going to be asked to write things and take a picture of it or scan it in. They are going to be asked to illustrate. They are going to be asked to show math problems. They are going to be asked to show their thinking skills. So definitely there are going to be opportunities for paper, but it will depend on each teacher, and it'll depend on the recommendations that the director of curriculum sends out to all the educators. But we are trying to stay as in sync with the in-person teachers, with the understanding that there is more independent learning going on in the remote model.
So if kids are social distance at their desks, will students have to wear their mask all day? So if they're able to move them 6 feet apart, are they also required to wear the mask?
If we follow just the CDC part and the county's recommendations, as soon as they're within 6 feet, then they would have their mask on. As we can spread them out further throughout the classroom, then they would be able to have a mask break, take them off, and then put them back on. We do know, according to John Williams, our director of facilities, that the air is exchanged 6 times every hour in our building to help lessen the exposure of any water molecules in the air and to keep our kids and our staff safe.
Awesome. Okay. Sorry if I muted you. That's just because we get some feedback on our end if we don't. Okay, so Julie wanted to just clarify. She said, just to clarify, if you start classroom in the classroom, can you switch to remote at any time?
The last conversations that we had as an administrative group were that if you start in person, that you can switch to remote, but once you switch, you need to remain there until the trimester.
Yep,
If
that's how
you
she
start
took.
remotely, you may not go to in person until trimester to honor the learning of both of those groups and their different platforms.
Yep, so Julia, it looks like you had that correct in your thinking. Okay, so somebody wants to know, will there be daily scans performed entering the school, such as taking temps, etc.?
Okay, Mrs. Meyer, let me go through a couple more slides because some of that stuff is coming up.
Good.
And
while you're grabbing those, can I just say, like, a couple people, Mrs. Hughes, have been like, teamwork makes the dream work, and hashtag Riverside, and it takes a village. And so, like, thank you for being encouragement in all this crazy stuff, you guys. I can't even tell you how much that means.
Just the amount of people just warms my heart to see all of you here to help collaborate with us and to share your concerns so that we can address them, as well as to thank you for your patience as we learn through this together. So the face coverings, like I said, we mentioned earlier, is mandatory, but there will be accommodations for any medical, physical, or developmental needs of any child. And we know that we will be offering mask breaks. We know that we're going to change the schedules. We know that we're going to look at hallway and encore as well, and we've addressed those in our conversations. Drinking water, the water refilling station will be available for your child to fill up a water bottle, but the water bubbler will not be accessible for students, just so that we can lessen the exposure of students. Food service, we are looking at a couple different models. We will limit the number of students that are allowed to go into the lunchroom if we determine that we're going to use it at all. Otherwise, all breakfast and all lunch will be delivered to the classrooms where we'll sanitize before and after each meal. Recess, we are going to look at in a grade model where we can have some numbers outside. We'd be looking at a grade level at recess only at one time. If we need to be following more strict protocols for safety, then we would have only one class out there at a time. And that will just require us to do some modifications to our schedule and something we can totally take care of. Activities, we have to suspend things like back to school night. We will come up with a virtual way to share with you. So all of our larger gatherings, we will look at virtual platforms or remote platforms to still have those occur. Transportation, most of our families walk, ride, or bike to us, but those that do take a school bus from us, they will be asked to wear masks. The transportation companies are working on spacing, modifying their schedules, and increasing their cleaning as well. Visitors is going to be something to sustain that higher level of safety for all students and to minimize any exposure. Visitors will be asked to buzz in at the front door. If you are there to pick up your child, for example, like for an appointment, we will have the child brought down to the office, and then a staff member will walk the child to the front door where you are waiting outside for them to lessen the exposure to the rest of the learning community inside. Same with even our mail. We're going to try to do as much as we can to pick it up at the door so that they're not being exposed and we're not exposed to them. Volunteering will be at a very minimal basis, again, to lessen exposure. It has to be a pre-approved thing. We're also asking that all masks are required when people do come in as visitors. The spacing would be essential, as well as hand washing and hygiene practices. We're increasing our cleaning. We're going to have daily cleaning. We're going to have repeated cleaning throughout the day in high traffic areas like a restroom, for example. All surfaces are going to be cleaned nightly and throughout the day. All shared materials have to be cleaned between the use of one student to the next, if at all, because we're going to try to keep everything just one-on-one. Hand sanitizer stations will be put in place where needed, and then we're going to utilize our sinks a great deal. And the health screening question. Staff are going to be going through a health screener every day before they can come to school to make sure that they're safe, as well as all students. Students at this time, according to the most recent information I've been provided, which it is a fluid situation and can change, parents will do the safety check at home, followed by the list that's given by Erin Brendelson and the county health department. You'll go through that safety checklist with your child to make sure that they don't have any of the symptoms and that all concerns are addressed. If they are then safe, then they will be allowed to come to school. If there's exposures, there will be set protocols that we need to follow and families need to follow. And each one of those is really different, from a sibling having it, from a person being exposed but had no test back. I mean, there's a different rule for each one of those, and we'll address those as each one of them is presented, but they are working really diligently on making sure we have all of that. Remote learning. We already addressed that the coursework has some great gifts to it for those of you that are thinking that this might be a good fit. If this is your puzzle piece fit, you get to learn at any time throughout the day. You will be having scheduled meetings with your teacher, but it'll be a time that you can agree upon within the school hours. The instructional standards will be used just like an in-person learner. There will be things like textbooks, digital resource. There will be guidance and instruction given so that you have opportunities to learn in more ways than just the computer. You will have communication services. So if you are a remote learner and you're an ELL learner or speech, or you are provided some other IEP service, that will be provided for you whether you are remote or in person. 4K and 5K, because that's a different learning world, are being asked to have less hours than remote learners of that example I told you. They are expecting anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day of work. That will change as your learner begins the school year and progresses throughout the year. It might start out as 2 hours and it might progress to being 4 by the end of the school year if you stayed in that remote model. Technology devices are going to be provided if a family doesn't have a device. And we're also going to work with administration building to help you get online if you need supports or you're not able to learn actively through your computers. We do not want to see our children learning through a telephone because the data shows that is not the best learning method for a child, that they need an iPad, a Chromebook, a computer, some type of learning device larger than a phone. And we did talk about the remote learning model in the minutes. And then just so you know, the planning guide is in English and Spanish, and it is on the school district website. And I'm going to leave this one up as we keep asking questions so that you have my email and our phone number at Riverside to take down if you need it, so that you can ask me anything really specific to your child or your family. All right, Mrs. Meyer.
What about supply lists?
Supply lists will be sent out yet this week from Riverside through Skylarts. So you'll get that if you are on Skylert to get our emails and our voicemails. So you'll get it via email yet this week. And it has been already given to the administration building, and they have already sent it out to places like Target. I know I had a family text last night. They were able to get it at Target without any problem. We are trying to hold that school supply list and not change it as much as possible because we all are looking for some, consistency, and things do not change. And so that's one of the things we're trying to hold with right now.
Great. Okay. So, so this one is for the younger kids with their drinking in their bottles and the reality of saying a 4 or 5K student keeping track of a water bottle and filling their own. Can you talk to that?
If your child brings a non-disposable bottle, we just ask that you have it labeled really well. They're going to have the 4K teachers, I know have already started the conversations, and we'll have those conversations throughout the entire building, but they'll have set spaces where they need to keep their water bottles so that it stays within their learning area. They also, if they're disposable and we find them at the end of a day, or that if they're ever miscellaneously around, they're automatically going to be thrown away. So make sure that you think ahead of time, like, if my child does misplace things, maybe you send them with a labeled bottle that is disposable, knowing that if it's ever misplaced, it's automatically going to be disposed of and thrown away, because we just don't want to take the risk of any exposure or any other child grabbing somebody else's stuff.
So what does food service look like? Is there an option for picking up for like lunches or even breakfast? Is there that option for families that are doing remote learning rather?
The support system is absolutely amazing in both systems. And in the remote system, you will be able to be picking up bag lunches just like you did last spring. So there will be sites, Riverside tends to be one, and I anticipate that we are again, to pick up bag lunches on a daily basis based on our school district calendar, to pick up that bag lunch every day.
Good. And what will happen if there is a child that is identified with a virus and they're doing the in-school option?
Okay. It depends on the scenario. So we will follow what the county health department and Aaron Brendelson share with us. For example, if I am a homeroom teacher and a child in my classroom is exposed, we would go to a remote platform while we wait for results, for example. We were always going to follow whatever the highest safety measure is. Now, am I going to be 100% correct in every example right now? Probably not, because it's a fluid situation and it changes. But we would present that situation to Aaron Brendelson and the county. Then they would say, okay, you think someone was exposed, your classroom learns virtually or remotely until we get a test result. If the test result comes back negative, then we follow the next guideline. Can the class come back? It matters on amount of exposure. It matters on how close the exposure is to the child from the classroom. So if it's a sibling's friend that is exposed, that would be different than a sibling or that actual student.
Good, yeah, and then I think you said that, but just to clarify that, a classroom might go home, but the school doesn't go home.
No, we would start at the smallest level as possible, because we want to try to sustain consistency for your child and for us. We provide the best education when we have consistency as well. And we want your child to know the routines and know all the safety practices and just thrive in their learning. So what we would do first is start at the individual level, who was all exposed to the student that potentially could be positive. And then from there, the county gives us recommendations of who we would want to be remote for a period of time. Based on the results, the remote period might be at 14 days to make sure that that child has been safely cared for, or it could be negative results and then we'd be able to be back in a shorter amount of time.
Okay, Jessica, go ahead and ask your question.
I don't know if I missed it. So if we go remotely, is Riverside going to provide the technology, the iPads and the Chromebooks, or will it be something we have to purchase? Because with 3 kids,
that's a lot. And
Yeah.
I have 3 of my own, so I get you.
Yeah.
We want to provide technology at all possible. So if you know of families that still have technology from last spring or from summer school, just encourage them to bring it in so we can clean it up and prepare it so it can get back in the hands of kids as soon as possible. If you don't have technology, you are going to be provided a form of technology from the school district. When you fill out your registration, please note that we are following, I actually went and practiced it today. And so I know what your registration looks like. And when I was working through with it with a teamwork of tech services, there is a question on there that asks you, do you have technology at home, something other than a smartphone, to provide learning remotely? And then it asks you what that device could be. It asks you if you have more than 1 learner in your home. And I think there's one more question. But it asks enough for us to get a really strong feel what supports you need. If you have technology in your home and you're comfortable with using that, you'll be able to tell us that and you'll be able to use your own technology. If not, we'll provide the support of Chromebooks or iPads depending on the educational level. And then there's a last question on there about, do you have access to be able to stream and watch remote learning? So do you have a lot of interruptions? Do you need some other types of supports, or can we help you reach out into the community of where you could get some online connections?
Good.
So the answer is yes when needed.
Galaxy Note 10, I see you have a question. You can unmute and ask.
I was wondering if you guys knew whether or not there have been any cases of corona in children in the state, much less the city.
That would be something we'd really want to just go on the Fond du Lac County Health Department, and you can find that on the Fond du Lac.
Yes, unless you guys knew. I was just wondering if that's. I guess mostly the earlier question that I had asked about the masks. If they drop the mask mandate, would the school still have its own mask mandate?
You know,
Guidance for it?
And that decision will have to be made at the moment based on numbers throughout our community, based on numbers throughout our school. And we would follow the guidance of, again, Aaron Brendelson, our Director of Health and People Services, as well as the Fond du Lac County.
Okay.
Things like what phase we're considered in would be something we would strongly look at when making that decision. and then for all the recommendations from the CDC, any outlet that can share factual information with us to make the most educated decisions that's the
Right.
safest for all.
I'm just wondering between now and when school starts, if the mandate gets overturned, is your guys' recommendation going with the health department, and the health department is saying that masks are still required inside or recommended inside? Like, is there an option that by the time school starts, there could be no mask mandate?
Yeah, those are all possibilities. I mean, a week ago, we said that only 3rd graders through 12th graders had to wear them based on the information and the facts we were provided at that time.
Right.
So it is fluid, and I can't speak factually until we get closer to that day.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Awesome.
No, thank you, though. I appreciate it.
All right.
Let's see. We answered that one. Somebody shared that the Walmart.com, you can get stuff for school, and I'm not sure if that means that our list is up there. Okay, so what happens when we have the cold and flu season, and maybe there's a breakout? Somebody wants to know. So what if some kids get colds and flu all season? Are you going to expect a child to get tested with every sneeze, cough, and fever? And then also, can I just say quick that Shannon, I did write down a note for Mrs. Hughes, and she will contact you.
Okay, in regards to cold and flu season, yeah, we're gonna have to address that with more sensitivity than we ever had before. We right now are working with our team leaders, so some of our staff, and as well as our health department, to figure out what would a safe room look like for a child that potentially could be positive for COVID, and what would a child look like for a learning or safe space for them if they were running just flu symptoms or other symptoms. And we're looking at 2 spaces in our building to support students so that they can safely stay there until a parent could come and pick them up. So if they didn't have symptoms in the morning, they have symptoms as the day progresses, we will have locations that can safely keep children safe and monitored until a parent can safely pick them up. If your child has a history of sinus infections, then we would meet with you and with our school nurse, and we would talk about that. Hey, they showed all these symptoms all these other years. This is a common characteristic for them. It doesn't tend to ever be anything more than just a sinus infection, and we would work with you on that so that you could still get the educational platform that you wanted.
Good. Okay, so Mrs. Hughes, we do not have any more questions up there.
Oh.
I know we couldn't possibly answer all of your questions, but there are a couple people that came in right at the end, and I just wanted to say that we recorded this, and I will render that recording tonight, and tomorrow I'll put it on the Facebook page with a link on there, and then you can go to our YouTube channel if you want to watch it and have that. Is there a place, you put your email on there, so if parents have questions, we can kind of field those questions as they come in.
Yep, and I can plop it back up quick. So there's our school phone number, 929-2880. And then my email underneath, it's a little different. It's hughesje@fondulac.k12.wi.us. And I will get back to you. I am actively working at stuff to support Riverside on a daily basis. So I definitely will get back to you in a timely manner if you send me an email.
Yeah, and I loved when you said at the beginning, Mrs. Hughes, that the decision you make is the right decision for you. We're not trying to sway you one decision or the other. We just want you to know what it's going to look like as much as we know what it's going to look like. But whatever your decision is, as a staff, we completely support that decision. And you're still part of the Riverside group. Even if you're learning remotely, it's not like we're putting you off in another school. Like, you are still part of the team of Riverside.
Mm-hmm. And we're always available to you. Whether you are a remote learner and you have a Riverside teacher, you're a remote learner and you have a teacher from another elementary school within Fond du Lac, or you're in person, we are always available to you. We are going to try to connect things with homeroom teachers so that you always sustain that love and Riverside ways. Yeah.
Awesome. And then just thanks for all the encouragement in the chat here too. Just people really appreciating the fact that it's a difficult time and that it isn't something easy for us to do. I just feel like this was really great though, Mrs. Hughes. Like it might, even as we get our numbers, it might be great for us to do. My husband called it a town meeting. For us to do that, yeah.
We're our own little town within a bigger one. Absolutely.
Right. And I see we have a number of people exiting because you promised to be done at 6:30.
Yeah. So please, if you have any questions, send them to us. But we're in this together. We're going to be as transparent as possible and share as much as we can so that you can make the best decisions for you and your family. And we respect all of those decisions, and we'll be here for you all along the way, and we'll work together.
Thank you, Riverside.
Thank you, Riverside.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting for everybody. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thanks, Mrs. Meyer.